Hello everyone. So today I'm going to go through the process of editing this photo and kind of show y'all exactly what I do to accomplish the look that I have. So first off, we have this image here. I really like this image. Um, it was shot red. It was shot at a high ISO, so 800 ISO, 55 millimeters focal length at 5.6 and 1/200th of a second. The reason why I had to bump up my ISO so much is because the sun was setting and it was just very hard to capture that much light. So I'm going to start off by just looking at my presets that I have here, and I already know the one that I want to show y'all, kind of how I made this preset. So I'm going to go and click on this one and see it changed over here. And I really like this look. It gives it an old kind of Western vibe to it. So I'm going to first start off by cropping this the way that I want it. So the structure is just a little bit distracting, so I'm going to bring that in there a little bit and kind of bring this side in just a tad. Right. That looks about right. Alright, now I'm just going to go through the settings and kind of show y'all exactly uh, what it is. So first I'm going to change my profile to Adobe Color. So I did that. I'm not going to mess with the white balance because I trust my white balance that I have there. I'm not going to mess with my exposure or contrast or the highlights or shadows. But I am going to change my whites down to about -12 and the blacks down to a -29. I'm going to bring my textures up to 16 and my clarity up to 16. And I'm not going to touch the dehaze, but I'm going to turn up the vibrance. Turn down the vibrance to -8 and turn down the saturation to -2. And what this does is it allows it to not be as vibrant because I wanted it to have a kind of a westerny style old vintage look to it. So that's why I have those settings there. And now we're going to get into the tone curve. The tone curve is really cool because you have your standard tone curve and then you have red, green, and blue here. And this is where it's going to get really interesting and kind of add my own style to it. So whenever I go back to my original point curve, I'm just going to add a point in the middle, a point about right here, and the input is going to be 59 and the output is 81. Now on this one, normally it's down here, so I bring it up to here, and the input is going to be 1, but my output is going to be 29. Now on the other side of that, I'm just going to mirror those settings. So if you cut this in half and you flip this section over to here, it's pretty much the same thing. So my input on this one is going to be 193 and my output 172. And for this one, I'm going to drag this one down a little bit, and my input's going to be 246 and my output is going to be 221. And then I'm going to move over to my red slider, and this is where I'm going to get a very hard S-curve. So down here, where it's more of the greenish colors, I'm going to have something similar to this. And same with my green, and then as well as my blue. Now we're going to go over to the HSL kind of sliders. And for the greens, I'm going to turn it, sorry, not the greens, the reds. I'm going to turn it down to -29, and the oranges to a +8. I'm not going to touch the yellows. The greens, I turn those down to a -20. And then my aqua, I'm going to turn that down to a -6. And my blue down to a -23. Now my purples, I'm going to be down to a -12. My magenta, a -4. With my saturation, for the reds, I'm going to turn it down just one tiny little notch. The oranges, I'm going to turn that up to be 5. And then my yellow, I'm going to turn that down to a -6. My greens are going to be +17. And my aqua is going to be a -13. And my blue is going to be a -40. My purple is going to be a -7. And my magenta is going to be a -4. Now that's for the saturation. Now let's move on to the luminance. For my luminance, for the red, I'm going to turn that up to 50. Oranges, a -4. Yellow, a +4. Green, is going to be a +36. My aqua is going to be a +64. And my blue is going to be a +60. My purple, +12. And magenta, +21. And this is where it's going to be doing all the color corrections and to turn it from this kind of like dull rock color to a more of a vintage style look, as well as his shirt changed from a very luminous blue, very deep blue, to a very shallow, actually, I'm sorry, it was very dull blue, and then I turned up the luminance on the blue. So, and now we're going to go into the color grading. The only things that I'm going to change in these two are going to be my shadows and my highlights. My shadows, I want to have a warm texture to them, a warm color to them. And my shadows are going to have the warm, and my highlights are going to have the cooler tones to it. Typically, you would switch them to where your highlights are going to be your warmer and your shadows are going to be the cooler. But I decided to go for this one just to add that extra kind of style to it. My blending, I'm going to turn it all the way up to 100. And on my sharpening, this is something that I do for every photo. I want to hit Alt, and then I click on the masking, and as I slide the slider, I can refine where the sharpening is going to take place. So that looks about right. And the black areas is where it's not going to be adding sharpening, and the white areas is where it's going to be adding sharpening. So just wanted to let y'all know that little bit of information. Now, also, as you can see in this photo, we have a lot of grain because I had to shoot at a very high ISO. So I'm going to turn up my noise reduction just a tad, just to soften out those the grain. I always turn on remove chromatic aberration, and as well as enable profile lens correction. And I'm going to add just a -18 vignette around the edges. It's not really noticeable, but it does kind of focus your attention to the middle of the subject. And for this photo, I'm going to turn down this grain. I don't want any grain in this image. And then for these, I'm just going to leave those alone. And I think that's about it. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.